Hello. Today I will be talking about Leon Trotsky, a Soviet revolutionary who helped influence the Russian Revolution. First, I'll be explaining his early life as a child. Leon Trotsky was born on November 7, 1879 in the city of Yanovaka, Ukraine. Leon was given the name Lev Davidovich Bronstein by his father, David Bronstein. Leon's father was a farmer with a Russian Jewish background and was a middle-class colonist. Leon also had a mother and an older brother and sister. As a young child, Leon was taught a mixture of the Russian and Ukrainian language. When Leon was 8 years old, he was sent to school in Odessa and spent 8 years there with his mother's nephew's family. Next, I'll be talking about Leon Trotsky's teenage years. During Leon's teenage years, he began to learn more and more concepts on Marxism. In 1896, when Leon was finishing school, he traveled to Nikolova and met an underground socialist circle that introduced him to Marxism. Marxism was the idea created by Karl Marx, later developed by their followers to form the basis for the theory and practice of communism. While Leon was at the underground socialist circle, he also met his future wife, Alexandra Sokolovskaya. As Leon kept on learning these ideas, he became very fascinated and wanted to create his own organization. While Leon was still finishing his last year of school at the University of Odessa, he decided to drop out and travel back to Nikolaev to create and found the underground South Russian Workers' Union. There he spent most of his time studying the ideas of Marxism. Next, I'll be talking about Leon's adult life. In 1898, Leon participated in revolutionary activity, which sent him to prison for 2 years. Leon traveled from prison to prison and finally ended up in Moscow. During this time, he was able to marry Alexandra Sokolovskaya. After that, Leon and Alexandra got exiled to Siberia for 4.5 years, and there Leon and Alexandra had 2 daughters. Also, when Leon was in Siberia, he studied philosophy and became aware of the 2 main parties, the Bolsheviks and the Mensheviks. Later in 1902, Leon escaped from Siberia by himself and forged a passport with a surname of Trotsky, which he adopted as his revolutionary name. Leon had to permanently leave Alexandra and headed towards London. At London, Leon worked and joined the Russian Social Democrats and worked with Georgy Plekhanov, Julius Martov, and Vladimir Ulyanov, known as Lenin. They worked on the revolutionary newspaper called the Iskra. Eventually, Leon became one of the main writers for the Iskra. During this time, Leon did not know that Plekhanov and Lenin were fighting. Plekhanov was an older member of the Iskra and had a group called the Mensheviks. Lenin was a lot younger and had a group called the Bolsheviks. So Leon decided to join Lenin and the Bolsheviks. During the Second Congress of the Russian Social Democrats in 1903, it was a fight between the 2 factions or groups, the Mensheviks and the Bolsheviks. During the meeting, most of the Russian Social Democrats, including Leon, sided with the Mensheviks, who believed in the ideas of socialism. Socialism was a political and economic theory which stated that production, distribution, and exchange should be shared evenly by community. Leon was going against Lenin, Plekhanov, and the Bolsheviks, who believed for a more massive and less disciplined party. Later that year, Leon married a woman named Natalia Sedova, and they had 2 sons. Leon was still not sure what party he should go into, so he tried to join both sides of the parties. But in 1904, Leon left the Mensheviks because there was too much arguing between the 2 groups. The Mensheviks and the Bolsheviks were constantly fighting, and Leon couldn't take it anymore. So, during 1904 to 1917, Leon considered himself a non-factional social democrat. During 1904 to 1917, Leon began to develop the theory of permanent revolution, which was an expanded idea from Karl Marx. He created a book called The Permanent Revolution. The Permanent Revolution is a political theory book by communist leader Leon Trotsky. Its title is the name of the concept of permanent revolution by supporters of Trotsky, which were called Trotskyists, in opposition to the concept of socialism in one country as supported by Joseph Stalin, or known as the Stalinists. In 1917, the Russian Revolution began, and Leon became the leader of the army. The Russian Civil War, which took place during 1917 and ended in 1922, was won by Leon's army, the Bolsheviks. The Bolsheviks were also known as the Red Army during this time and defeated the White Army. Because of Leon's great leadership skills, tactics, and his brilliance during the battle, the Bolsheviks were able to win. After Leon's heroic feat, he was elected into the Bolshevik Central Committee. Next, I'll be talking about after that and when Lenin was about to die. But before Lenin died in 1922, he gave his testament, which stated for change for the Soviet government. In Lenin's testament, he also stated that there would be fighting between Lenin and Stalin. Privately, when Stalin was gone, Lenin discussed with Leon that he should try and kill Stalin because he was a terrible leader. Leon agreed, but did not really want to, though. The great leader of the Bolsheviks, Vladimir Lenin, died. Eventually got 3 strokes, then paralysis, loss of speech, then died on January 21st, 1924. During the time when Lenin was slowly losing his speech in 1922, Stalin came into power and was in the position of the Central Committee General Secretary. Stalin quickly started using his powers and created secret police organizations, propaganda, and many horrible things to stop Leon's powers. Leon was very mad with what Stalin was doing, so in October, Leon criticized Stalin in the way he was handling things. Leon thought that Stalin was doing the wrong things and was just trying to make the government corrupt. Stalin ignored Leon's comments. Instead, he used propaganda to make Leon sound like he was saying nonsense. Those that still believed in Leon were called the Trotskyists and followed Trotskyism. When Stalin put the propaganda around everywhere, Leon became ill and decided to leave Stalin. So in 1925, Stalin removed Leon from being the war commissariat. Then in October of 1927, he was removed from his position in the committee. After Leon was removed from the committee, he was expelled with his wife, Natalia Sedova, from the Soviet Union to Turkey on the island Buyukada. While he was there, he wrote his autobiography and his history of the Russian Revolution. Leon was constantly moved about once a year to a different location and had to leave his second wife forever. He moved to France in 1933, where he created the Fourth International, which was a movement for Trotskyism. In 1935, he was moved to Norway. Then in 1936, he was forced to seek asylum in Coyoacan, Mexico. Leon Trotsky lived in a home while he was seeking asylum in Coyoacan. Sadly, Stalin sent a Spanish-born agent named Ramon Mercader to kill Leon Trotsky. On August 20th, 1940, Ramon Mercader used an ice axe to kill Leon. Leon didn't immediately die because the blow wasn't very strong, so Leon was lying on the floor, wounded but still alive. Leon called his bodyguards for help, and they sentenced Ramon for 20 years. The bodyguards helped bring Leon to the hospital so he could be operated to fix the wounds. Leon lived for another full day, but then died at 60 years old from shock. Leon was a hero for being a leader and the commander of the Red Army. Now we'll be talking about how Leon Trotsky relates to Animal Farm. In the book Animal Farm by George Orwell, the big snowball is used to represent Leon Trotsky. Leon Trotsky led the Russian Civil War, which relates to Snowball leading the Battle of Cowshed. Snowball and Leon Trotsky have the same ideas, trying to make everyone happier and for everyone to have freedom. Leon Trotsky's leadership and Snowball's leadership skills are very similar. When Snowball talks about the windmill, Orwell is relating that to history. when Leon gives a speech about the new direction for the government, which Stalin disagreed with. When Snowball is exiled out of Animal Farm by Napoleon's 9 ferocious dogs, Orwell is connecting that to history when Leon is exiled by Stalin. Snowball was an amazing and powerful leader during the Battle of Cowshed, and Leon Trotsky was also an amazing, powerful leader during the Russian Civil War. Thank you for listening to my presentation.